start off by asking each of the individuals to just give a short bio to give their context of their comments. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm Jeff Hopkins. I lead the Project Solutions business model for Honeywell.
Hello, I'm Steve Kershaw. I'm the global public sector defense leader for PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Good morning, my name is Nils Herzberg. I very recently retired from SAP, where I was actually the industry business unit director for the solutions that SAP provided to the aerospace industry.
Good morning, my name is Nick Manzo. I'm the director of Aerospace and Defense for Cora.
Okay, Jeff, if we can start off with you, and then we'll go down the line. The first question is around, let's talk about impact. You know, how is digitization impacting the speed, the cost, predictability on aerospace programs? And, you know, could you share some examples of some improvements that have taken place? We're going to talk about the future later. So this is really about validation of the experiences that I just talked about notionally.
Yeah, sure. So I think there's two fundamental benefits from digitization. So one is putting the tool in place, a standard tool, actually reinforces your standard work that you have for your people. So it helps them kind of get through their day in a standard way. The second is what you alluded to, which is by moving data out of email and spreadsheets into a system of record, you're able to start to monetize that data. So I'll just give you a very simple example, because I think probably everybody here has to deal with this, is billing, you know, your cash flow. And so what we've done is we put all of our billing milestones into Cora. We've then taken that out into a data lake and done a couple things with it. So first of all, you can kind of visualize all of that. I can go to one dashboard. I can see all of the billing milestones for all, you know, roughly 10,000 projects that we're working on in one place. But we didn't stop there. We have a smart chatbot tool that we have in there. And so now that chatbot will send a note or a Teams message to our PMs 30 days before that milestone is due and say, hey, you've got a billing milestone coming up. Are you ready for that? Have you done all the work? To make sure that that's submitted in the way that the customer expects it to be submitted. And then we've gone even further and put some AI models on that to be able to predict which of those billing milestones we're going to hit and which ones we're going to miss. So the net of all of that is in 2023, we improved our working capital position by about $500 million from both getting more billing out in a timely way, but also, importantly, reducing past dues where we didn't bill it right and then the customer would send us the invoice back. So that's been very, obviously very value accretive for the company.
Could you just say that number again?
$500 million on a base of about $6 billion of business.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Steve?
So I was very taken by the characterization of data liquidity, Tim. So I'll give you a couple of examples of that. One about improved speed of decision making enabled by data liquidity, and the other about asset utilization, which is another of the outcomes that you mentioned. I have to admit that I feel a bit of a fraud here, because my background is I was on submarines. So I'm here at an air show, which is like the opposite of submarines. So these examples are going to be from maritime, and it's okay, everyone. I'm no longer radioactive. It was a while back. So first example is some work that we've done in the UK submarine enterprise, which is geographically dispersed. So submarines are maintained in Scotland and Plymouth, but the nerve centre, if you like, is in Bristol. There's also different organizations that work in them. When somebody does some maintenance and has to replace a part, and because safety is paramount in this industry as well as aerospace, then the decision to replace that part and make sure that it's got the right provenance, the right people are engaged, can be quite complicated, and a lot of it is done by emails and spreadsheets, etc. But by putting all of the data into one place in a data warehouse, such as you've said, then the decision making has gone from maybe in some cases several months to actually days. And when you look at some of the causes of disruption in maintenance programs of some of these types of assets, that is one of the primary drivers, is the length of time it takes to make a decision like that. But the thing is, it's not actually the length of time it takes to make a decision. That can be minutes. It's getting the right information to the person that can take the decision, which is taking all the time. And another example I give you is something that we've done in surface ships, where by looking at the causes of maintenance cycle duration, and again pulling all of the data together, we've been able to reduce the duration of a major maintenance period for a warship by 40%, wow, which is a significant improvement. And when you scale that up across a whole Navy, like the Royal Navy, it's the equivalent of 2 extra ships. So that's the kind of impact that this data liquidity can give you.
Thank you. Nils?
Yes. So as I said, I worked for a very major company who makes these systems of records, and I was at the side of a lot of aerospace companies for probably 25 years, and sort the journey. So I've actually witnessed very much the digitization efforts from the very beginning, and there are really 3 things that I've observed. The one is that the speed of business has increased over the 25 years, from monthly earned value to weekly earned value, and in some cases even hearing about daily earned value analysis and the implication of that. The second thing that I've observed, and you can only do this because of digitization, and it is the precision of business. I witness customers who are actually competing on the second digit behind the comma, which you cannot do if you're doing everything on paper. It just doesn't work. So the second one. And now it is also the predictability of business coming into it, which is very much driven by the fact that you have the data. And we are at the Aerospace show right here. If you just take the analogy of landing aeroplanes, there are Cat 1 landings, Cat 2 landings, Cat 3 landings, Cat 3 being automated landings. And this is very much where also businesses are going. Program managers like to do a precision landing of their program, a spot landing. And that requires a lot of information about where you are today and not where you were 4 weeks ago. Your pilots out here, they don't land at Farnborough because they knew where they were 4 weeks ago, because they know where they are right now. And that is what digitization gives you. And then we will be getting towards the predictability, the automated landing, and all of those technologies. This is the basis, and this is a journey. And I think, Tim, you've been on this journey, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is about those precision landings and predicting of where you're going to land.
Yes. So could each of you talk a bit, Jeff, we'll start with you again, around the challenges as you've gone through this, that, not all the challenges, but some of the key challenges that you've experienced, and how did you address those? Because it's something that needs to overcome, and I started off by saying that it's easily said, but difficult to do, and this is the area where we really want to talk about what are some of those challenges that you have experienced, and how did you address those?
Yeah, so when we start talking digitalization, a lot of times people see it as an IT problem, but it's the people side of change is really the key challenge. And I think you have to deal with 3 kind of tiers of stakeholders. So the senior leaders in the company, they care about what's in it for the company. It's really about the financial performance predominantly. And they've got to agree that it's a priority. They've got to provide the resources. And I think they have to set a time frame under which this is going to be accomplished, or you run into these programs that just will run for years and years and years without making progress. And then, of course, we have to address the users, the people who are actually going to use, operate the work process and use the set of tools that you're developing. And they really care about what's in it for them and what does it mean for them on a day-to-day basis. So they need sometimes to know why, but they certainly need to know the how of what they're expected to do. They need training, they need hypercare, they need support. But you can't stop there, because the most important group is that group in the middle. The general managers, the leaders of the folks that are going to be using the tool, because they have a very difficult job, because they have a P&L that they have to deliver. They typically own the resources that are being going through the transformation, but they understand the expectations of senior leadership. So they've got to balance all of those three things together, and that's a very, very difficult challenge. So I spend most of my time with those GMs, really making sure that they understand what's in it for their people, what's in it for the company, what it means to them, and supporting them in that transformation. I think if you get that right, you can really accelerate the transformation.
So I completely agree, Jeff, that the people aspects of this transformation are key. I can give lots of other examples, but since you've already spoken so eloquently about that, I'll pick another challenge. Certainly from my point of view, I think that a number of big defense programs these days are collaborative in nature. So that is either across companies or across nationalities, and in many cases both. So if you look at like the F-35 program, for example, lots of different companies involved, lots of different nationalities. So Tim, you said that this stuff's really hard to do, and that was just for Honeywell. So if you're trying to do something and you're trying to get organizations and different nations to also cooperate, that adds a different level of complexity. And I see this playing out in a number of programs. So obviously cloud is a very important business tool for everyone, given the computing power that it offers you. How do you all land on the same cloud approach and solution so that companies and territories can share data securely, because defense programs are often highly classified in a cloud environment? I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we're all facing in this sector.
Yeah. What are the challenges about digital and digitization? It's already in the word, digital. It's either a 0 or it is a 1. There is no ambiguity, there's no shade of gray. And sometimes organizations find that very, very difficult to deal with, because they love ambiguity. They actually love cutting corners, maybe delivering the goods before the master data for the supplier has been put in. So it has actually a very much there's a frustrating element to the people, because they have to behave like the system. It is yes or no. It's no maybe. Those things are gone. But also, I think it is, Tim, the point that you actually also raised. You need to define what you are talking about in terms of the data. And there cannot be ambiguity on that as well. Otherwise, there is no comparability between what the data really means. And that is something that usually is also a source of a huge amount of arguments, especially when you are, like Tim, consolidating down from hundreds to 9 systems. You actually have to make those folks work in a different way. They need to be understanding what the words mean, what the definitions mean, and that is when you can actually go and you can accelerate your business. However, the good news is, I think in the aerospace industry, in comparison to very many other industries, is used to definitions. Otherwise, aircraft wouldn't fly, because it is actually very, very common. So it is not that much of a difficult in this industry. I've seen much, much, much worse in other industries, because they lack that discipline that the aerospace industry has for itself.
Just to expand on comments my colleagues made, change management doesn't happen, or the biggest challenge is change management, and it doesn't happen overnight. These projects that Tim and Jeff and my colleagues talked about take months, if not years. And there needs to be a consistency into why. Why are we doing this? Why are we executing at these levels of efficiency? Why are we trying to change the organization that's operated under this way for 20, 30, 40 years? Right? All of these digitization and modernization projects have huge impact on the organization, and particularly on the employees. I'm only recently at Cora. Previously, I was at the federal and defense side, and I helped the VA transform over 5 years. So the VA is the Veterans Administration for the U.S. government. transformed over 5 years on how they engage with the veterans. Over 9 million veterans, over 170 hospitals. That didn't happen in a month. That didn't happen in 3 months. That took 5 years. But at the end of those 5 years, over 2,000 veterans' lives were saved because they saw, why are we doing this? Why are we moving towards digitization and modernization? It's because what's the value of a veteran's life? That's their mission at the VA. And I know that that isn't as applicable in some cases to aerospace, but the goal was very clear organizationally. Why? Everyone could point back to the why. And that aspect of mission intent, that ability to be clear in that message, was supported and helped the VA transform that agency into a place where veterans wanted to come and take over care. So it really is change management, in my view, is the hardest thing, and ensuring that everyone in that organization understands the why you're doing this.
You know, to put kind of a footnote on this change management element to this, I was just reflecting on that. Before I was actually in the digital world here, I went and did a benchmark. So think in terms of this is around the year 2000. And there was a company that doesn't exist anymore in aerospace that had gone through an ERP deployment. And after the fact, it was believed to be one of the, at that point, most successful SAP deployments at that time. And I went out to the company and I was meeting with them because we were starting to think in terms of undertaking this at Honeywell. And it struck me that what had happened was they actually brought up the fact that they had done a configuration and they had configured the solution. They had trained the workforce and they had done a remarkably good job of training. What ended up happening was that between when they finished the training, their go live was going to be after they did their financial close on, let's say, January 6th. They found that the configuration that they had configured was not appropriate. It didn't have flow down, compliance flow down. So they changed the config over the holidays. But they changed the config and they held the go live date to January 6th. The change management process was a disaster for a couple of days because what people they were current and they were very familiar with how to run this business and all the transactions that they would need to undertake. But when they showed up on January 6th, it was a different set of transactions, right? And so here was something that was just marveled as a very, very successful go live. Once they got through that, but understanding that, so it really made an impression, and I think it's validating what a number of you are saying, that the change management is clearly one of those very important imperatives. Maybe we could
Tim, if I can just go in there,
Yes,
please. There are horror stories about these, but there are some good stories
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
I once came across an implementation also in the aerospace, customer to remain unnamed. They went go live, and they discovered $90 million that they had forgotten to invoice to their customer. So there are good stories about this, and as well. So that discovery paid for the whole project just because of the transparency that had been gained. So it's not all bad. Sometimes it's difficult, but there are some very, very good stories. The one that I had the best, it was not in aerospace, a customer who actually generated 1.5 billion in benefits from being able to adjust the risk models within their company, which they had not been able to adjust in their previous solution.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe we can talk about, so if we were speaking to a number of the individuals within the audience and they were embarking on digitization within their organizations, what advice would you provide to them in order to have this be a successful undertaking?
Yeah, so I think as we look forward into the future, I know it's not a bit of a buzzword, but the generative AI is going to become a critical component of any of our future and AI in general. And a lot of people, it's become a bit of a buzzword now. People want to get into this, but they lack the data because they haven't gone through the digitization. So part of it is keeping that eye on what the benefit is around digitization and the monetization of the data, particularly as you get into AI, because everybody wants to go do that now, but they don't necessarily have the data associated with it. So there's an inherent value, even though getting data out of the email and spreadsheets and into an enterprise system, even if that proposition in and of itself doesn't seem like it has a great business case, it's what you can do with it going on.
The one I would draw out is to take advantage of transparency. So you mentioned transparency in your presentation. Digitization gives you a degree of transparency you wouldn't have had before, and sometimes I see organizations, particularly when they're collaborating with others, not reap the benefits of that transparency because they're used to operating in stovepipes. The ability to be able to see across organizational and territory boundaries is really important. I'll give you a couple of examples. Some of this may chime with you guys and the audience. So what I've seen when people are managing complex programs is sometimes there are at least 3 programs in existence. There's the one you tell the client, which is normally an optimistic version. There's the one you tell the workforce in order to keep them really keen, and then there's the one that you secretly think is the actual program. Well, that is really suboptimal and is a very strange way of managing the world, but unfortunately that's how people do it sometimes. I think having a single version of the truth, and you can compartmentalize it so that you don't need to show everybody everything, but I think everyone through the supply chain having a single view of the program, progress, supplies, issues and risks and opportunities is one of the key benefits of digitization. So my advice would be don't throw that away and make as much use of it as you can.
Yeah, my first comment was don't view digitization as the implementation of a tool or another tool. I think then you're just failing if you just think that you're implementing tools and that this is an IT problem. I think what you're implementing is change enabled by digital solutions. You are actually changing rituals within your companies. You're establishing new rituals of behavior in your companies that are underpinned by digital solutions. I think the other part is that if we are now specifically in the domain of program management, project management, recognize that that is a team sport. Everybody has to pull their weight, and whatever you do in terms of the clarity of data, the precision of results, the deadline of results, whatever you implement is as good as the weakest link that you've implemented on the human side through training or from the solution. There are solutions that are very slow, there are solutions that are very fast. They have different fidelity of data in them. So whatever you do is as good as the weakest link. And I think what you have to be continuously doing is to work on your weakest link, to make sure that it is eradicated or improved, whatever your choice is, because only then will you pick up on your speed of business, on your precision of business, and on your predictability of business.
I think there's 2 things I want to talk about. One is, and Jeff made this statement in some of our conversations, which is view data as a strategic asset within your organization. Right? So change the perspective of what that data means. Hold it in that level of high regard because it really will unlock all of these aspects. The other piece is what the CTO of Boeing ended with, which is at the core of all this are your employees. And why is that important is these projects, again, are multi-year projects, right? So you need to show consistent wins. Galvanize the engagement, galvanize the value, galvanize the organization to continuously build upon the successes so the change process happens over time. And then the other aspect of it tied to those 2 pieces, in my view, is, and I keep on going back to the employees, there's a view in the industry that I believe, which is important, which is the workforce is changing, right? There's a huge amount of information around the turnover rate within your organizations, right? Whether it's at certain percentages, but in the federal government and the Defense Department, it's extremely high, right? And why is that important? Because I don't think organizations are attracting people not because of the innovation here. People want to become engineers and build really cool planes and really cool ships and really cool capabilities. They don't join an organization because they want to work in spreadsheets all day long, right? And I keep on reiterating that because these digital transformations change the way the employee views the organization and allows you to expand that perspective, and it dynamically enables you to ensure that as these individuals leave, the turnover time, the training time can get shorter and shorter, so your speed to delivery, your speed to execution, your speed to innovation actually increases.
I know your caffeine low-level light is starting to illuminate, so I'm just going to ask one more question, which is, this is looking out. So all of you have decades and lots of experiences. So if you look ahead, what are the digital technologies that are emerging or that are going to have the most significant impact, over the next 5 years? The impact may not be realized in the next 5 years, but those technologies that are going to come out that are going to have a very significant impact from a aerospace market development program management.
Yeah, I'll pick off kind of where I left off on I think we're just beginning to understand how impactful generative AI is going to be and how quickly it's going to impact the way that we work. And so I'll give you two quick examples of things that we're actually doing today, and a third that I think I'm very excited about doing in the near future. So one is there's a lot of great tools out there right now around software development where generative AI can help software developers in a couple ways. One is it can help them kind of write the code, finish the code, but the other thing is once they're done with that, it will generate the unit test scripts for them. So just those kind of simple things, we're already seeing conservatively a 10% productivity in our software developers, and we think there's probably 30 to 40% productivity within that group. And we're doing this today live. This is out across 4,000 software developers. The second is we're using generative AI to read our contracts and turn our contracts into structured data and then associate that structured data in Cora with a project. So now we're turning unstructured data in a Word document into structured data. And now I can think about looking at the performance of those projects and which of the terms and conditions in the contract are actually most relevant to driving outcomes. And then I can convert that down the road into having AI reading new contracts coming in and doing the first red line will actually be done by AI versus being done by a lawyer straight off the bat. And then the third one that I would just share that we haven't done yet, but I'm very interested in pursuing is we're very concerned broadly about, we have a lot of expertise in the company, and as those people leave, as they retire, you lose a lot of knowledge. And if that knowledge is on their hard drive and they turn their computer in and that hard drive gets wiped, you've just eliminated a lot of valuable knowledge and information. So when we have that then in a system of record, we can use generative AI to mine that data. And you can imagine from a program management point of view, a program manager saying, hey, I'm working on this project for Boeing, it's to do this application. What are the threats that I should anticipate being on this project? And then the generative AI would help them start to build that threat and opportunity register. I think those kinds of applications will be in place within the next 6 months to a year. I think this is going to move a lot faster than people think, and I think it's going to be a lot more impactful. And so key is, again, to be ready. If you've gone through that digitization, as Honeywell has, I think we're very well positioned to take advantage of these tools as they come on board.
Thank you.
Thanks. So a couple from me. One, just building on your AI point. I think when you ask anybody, what do you think is going to happen over the next 5 years, it's difficult to ignore AI, but I'll put a slightly different spin on it. In that the AI that I'm most interested in is the actual intelligence of human beings and how that can be enhanced by artificial intelligence. So I think there's tremendous potential in using AI, generative AI, machine learning to actually remove some of the analytical, time-consuming work that humans do and focus more on, well, what does that mean and what decisions should I make, which liberates us. One of the things to watch out for there is a bit like your assured autonomy that our speaker from Boeing was talking about, is how do you assure that the advice you're getting from an AI is correct, and it's not hallucination or something like that. So I think that's a key development and something to watch out for. The other one, which I think brings most of this together, is the more widespread use of digital twinning. So digitization to a lot of people means putting whatever you've got in a digital format and putting it into a data warehouse of some kind. But digital twin, in my view, takes that further and basically gives you a digital representation of the program or the enterprise right through the life cycle and from end to end. And when you mention that some of these projects and programs have a life cycle of 20 to 50 years, I find it puzzling that people don't naturally invest in a digital twin for something of that timescale, complexity, and cost. Because if you can use a digital twin to forecast and do scenarios and get much better insight on what's going to be the impact if I did this change or that change, that can have tremendous benefits to the program. So I know they exist already, and we've helped to implement a few, but I think they should be much more systemic and widespread.
Yeah, so let me take off my headset here. I think the first thing that is going to happen is that most employees going forward will be working to deal with the exceptions and not with the rules. So I think that the first 80% of work will be automated over time, and the workforce of the future will be focusing on dealing with the exceptions. When dealing with the exceptions, I do think that digital platforms and solutions will be there as assistants, as co-pilots when you are dealing with those exceptions. It will be AI-based. I spoke a lot about the precision of business. I do think that the digital solutions will provide insights, whether it is patterns, whether it is knowledge that was not accessible, on how to deal with this. So I think that, as I said, one, automate the first 80% of business, and having smarter, faster solutions to resolve the exceptions, which are the other 20% of the business.
Thank you. Nick?
I'm going to go shorter term, just like Jeff brought up, but I think we spend a lot of time thinking about quantitative analytics. So the ones and zeros of everything, where the financial aspects, 500 million saved, 90 million found. But to Jeff's point, the qualitative side, I think, gets lost, and the opportunity to truly integrate the qualitative analytics, and not just in contracts, but for every project that's going on within your organization, how many emails are being sent in support of that contract or in support of that project? How much of that information in those emails or in those documents is being lost as it relates to the efficacy or the delivery of that project? The opportunity to take summation and qualitative insight from those emails and bring those back into the project management lifecycle, and ensure that, again, to Jeff's point, that if people leave, you're not just looking at the ones and zeros associated with the financial value of the execution, but you're looking at the qualitative brilliance of what was going on in support of that innovation, in support of that project. I'll only state the reason why I think this is a lot closer is, again, I mentioned the work we did at the VA, the 2,000 veteran lives saved. That was all through qualitative analytics. That was actually being able to decipher veteran feedback and in real time notify a mental health crisis environment around a veteran at risk of some type of self-harm. And there were 2,000 incidences of engagement based upon that in the previous organization I was with. So it's available. It's now just integrating it and leveraging it for the execution internally within your organizations.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to, that's the end of the panel interview. I'd like to express my appreciation for my colleagues for joining us this morning and providing your insights and sharing those with the audience. And I appreciate the audience joining us this morning. If there's follow-on questions, comments, discussions that anyone that's here would like to have, A number of us will be in booth 4920, which is in this hall. And this is obviously a subject that we're very passionate about and very excited about. Thank you very much.